So, hi, my name is Andreas and I'm a software engineer at FireStart. Today I'm going to tell you the story of how we saved months of work while rebuilding a legacy web application using web components. Now, first of all, what was the application that we were trying to rebuild? At FireStart, our customers create process models that build their business processes inside the FireStart Windows application. And if you want to view them from any device, then you go to the process portal and can open them and view all the tasks that they consist of. Now, our data has shown that more and more users want to view their process models from mobile devices, and our legacy application wasn't really ready for that. And aside from that, the tech stack made it hard for us to change any, to create any new features and make any changes to the existing application. So we decided to rebuild this from scratch with a modern tech stack using Angular. Now, this is what it looked like in the beginning. As you can see, we were making steady progress and we already had some pages here. You could already view the models in the list. But there was one tiny detail missing, namely, you couldn't actually view the process models yet. Now, you saw it already in the last slide. This is what the modeler looks like. And as you can see, this is a quite complex component because we have lots of different process models and different process elements that we need to render. And aside from that, the logic has grown over many years to cover different edge cases so that the modeling behavior, the rendering behavior is consistent across the Windows application and the web application. So that means that re-implementing this from scratch wasn't really feasible, and it would have taken us months and would still not cover any edge cases that we came across. So we had to find a solution to this in a short amount of time because we wanted to ship the preview for the new application soon to our users. So the deadline was getting closer and closer. Now, we all sat together. This is a picture of my colleagues. And we thought really hard about how we could solve this problem without having too much effort from the engineering team. Now, the obvious solution would be to just copy all the old code into the new process portal and call it a day. But this wasn't really feasible because for some time we want to have a parallel support with the old application still being available to users while the new application is getting ready. So if we just copied the code, we would have had to duplicate any changes that might come up during development. Then the next most obvious solution that we thought about was just implementing an iframe that would render a view of the old process portal inside the new process portal. Now, this was possible for us because we had a query parameter that we could pass so that all the UI elements of the old process portal are hidden and you could only see the model renderer. Now, actually, this was quite a good and clever solution. We even tried it. But during testing, we noticed that the load time was getting really high because the whole process elements needed to be loaded 2 times, once from the outside new application and once from the iframe view. So this was also not really feasible and wasn't really user-friendly. So we had to come up with some other thing that would save this project. So we thought really hard, and what we came up with was using web components. Now, web components are a set of standard web APIs that you can use to build reusable UI components that you can then implement in your web page independent of any framework. So it doesn't matter if you use jQuery or React or Angular. If you wrap it in a web component, you can just use it in any application. So all we had to do was, in theory, wrap the old model renderer inside a web component and then include it in the next-gen portal and load the data that we fetch from the FireStart server. So, of course, this sounds much easier than it actually was. We still had some challenges that we still had to overcome. The first of which was bundling the application. So the old application didn't really have bundling implemented. There was a bundling mechanism, but it could not be used by us to create a reusable library that we could then publish internally and include in other projects. So we had to switch to something more modern like Webpack and actually add all the different import statements. So we had to make the dependencies between our files explicit so we could then bundle it inside a library. So here you can see a before and after view. As you can see, before, all the script files were just imported directly into the HTML, into the index HTML. And after that, we had normal ES6 imports, like it is common nowadays. In addition to that, Webpack also enabled us to implement TypeScript support so that we could have more safety when refactoring the application going forward. All right, so now that we solved bundling, let's go to third-party libraries. Now, the old renderer was built with a lot of third-party libraries like jQuery or Convert.js, which we use to model the actual renderer. And for those of you who have tried to use jQuery together with Webpack, you will know that it's kind of a pain. And we had to spend a lot of time with trial and error with different Webpack configs that should support all the different jQuery plugins that we used. Now, I won't go into too much detail because this would be quite boring and would just blow out the scope of this talk. But if you're still interested, feel free to send me a message and I will answer any of your questions. Right, so now that we solved these challenges, it's finally time to create our actual web component. Now, this is actually fairly easy. All you have to do is create a custom element class, as you can see here with the model renderer element, that you could then use to initialize a shadow root. So Shadow DOM is also an API from web components that I will get into later. And inside this Shadow DOM, we could then initialize our legacy model renderer component. Now then we just have to define the model renderer element so that the browser recognizes it and load the content via a setter that we can then provide from outside of the library from the next-gen application. So this is what the usage inside the HTML looks like. As you can see, this just looks like any other HTML component with the addition of this shadow root here. So this is what the Shadow DOM API does. You wouldn't want all of your styling and code and in general the whole DOM tree to leak into the application in which you use the web component, because, for example, the styling is still quite different in the renderer than in the actual application. So Shadow DOM encapsulates this. So your styling from the outside application cannot leak into the web component. Now, in fact, this is so well encapsulated that you can only see this here because the Shadow DOM is declared as open. Whereas if I would have set the mode here to closed, then you couldn't even see this. Then it would just be like a native browser component. Right, so as a recap, we bundled our renderer as a reusable NPM library, included all the necessary third-party libraries like jQuery so that it could load. And then we extracted the web component with encapsulated styling and logic that we could then use in our new application. And this is what it looked like. So as you can see, this is the next-gen application with the new styling. And inside it, we still have the old model renderer. This is all the same code. We didn't really have to change anything from the rendering logic. So this really saved us a lot of time. It took us just a couple of weeks to get started, instead of the months that it would have taken to rebuild this from scratch. And in addition to that, we could still use the extracted library inside the old application. So we have a single source of truth for how the model rendering behavior should work. So in fact, this approach was working so well for us that we decided to also use it for our dashboards component you can see here. And again, we saved a lot of time. We were able to ship the next-gen application in time for the release, and then we lived happily ever after. Thanks for your attention. I'm Andreas Hässler. If you want to contact me, just write me a LinkedIn message or an email, and I am happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you.